You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfrey and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
But today's topic is strategy dead again? And what I mean by that is this question is asked every 6 months or so by all the punditry. And could that be because it is dead? I don't know, but it's been dying for like 20 years. But I thought what we might do is set some stakes in the ground and kind of, say what are we really talking about when we say strategy. I sort of imagine a continuum between, hey, let's try some stuff and see what works, to analysis paralysis, right? So it's like, that's kind of the difference between no strategy and too much strategy. So, but is strategy dead? What do you think?
No,
I have an
don't.
opinion.
I'm willing to hear yours.
I'm asking you.
You think it is
yours.
dead? I don't think it's dead at all. I think there's some confusion in the marketplace with it, just like you were saying, because I think a lot of organizations are too busy doing tactical marketing, where they're just doing stuff like you were talking about, and then, oh, that didn't work, let's try this, and let's try, but I think there's maybe half of the companies out there have some good strategies where they actually go through a process and put this in place. So I don't think it's dead, but I think the biggest issue is I don't think some organizations understand the benefits of it, or why to do it, or even just like you were saying, Pete, what is it? So
what
maybe
exactly is it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's been so flogged in terms of definition by everybody in the room that now nobody knows what the word strategy means. So of course, and you mentioned the word tactical. These are military words, by the way. They all come from the military. Campaign, military. And so there's a great metaphor there. But the thing that I see going on is the bigger companies, the mega companies, they're all about strategy, brother. How do you think they got so big? But mid-sized companies, and especially startups, there's this thing that's kind of risen, and it's sort of minimum viable product, lean startup approach, where you iterate very fast, or you try a very wide range of a whole bunch of things. It's the black swan idea, right? And one of them's going to work and pay for all the others. But isn't that just a version of, hey, let's try some stuff and see what works? It's sort of the marketing equivalent of hold my beer.
Yeah.
So I just, I try to put it in Wisconsin terms.
Yeah, I like that. Well, let's talk about a couple different things. So, first of all, I think, we should also, I want to address what you just said, but I think we should also talk about like the difference between like a business strategy and a marketing strategy, because I think that those are key. And by the way, for our listeners, it's absolutely critical that you align the marketing strategy with your business strategy. So, the business strategy obviously is that high level 30,000 foot view, your company's goals and objectives, what your strengths and weaknesses are, who's the market, who's the competition. I mean, so it's that really high level view. In my opinion, the marketing strategy would be more along the lines of, what's our plan for how we're going to promote our products, whether it's through marketing, advertising, public relations, you name it. How are we going to engage those customers? And so it's still big picture. So how I look at it, and tell me, Pete, if you agree with this, I look at it as you got 30,000 feet, kind of like that big picture view. Then we bring it down a level to the marketing strategy, which is kind of at maybe 10, 15,000 as we're starting to land. Once we hit the road, those are tactics, you know what I mean? So those are the things that we're going to do. So I don't know.
Well, I think it gets conflated with, is strategy, is that the same thing as a plan? Yeah. And it's actually not. It's the plan to me is like the documentation of the strategy. And that is the culmination of a journey that a team would go through, asking the questions, even the questions that they think they know the answers. They still ask all of the questions. They get the data that's missing, and then they make their decisions based on that data, not like the CEO going, there's only one reason people buy. It's because of price. And,
Yeah.
take
I
my
mean,
word
that's
for
not,
it.
wait a
Right?
minute. That's not true.
Yeah.
I-
Why is none of our stuff working?
yeah.
People,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, we keep trying stuff. I don't know. It sure is getting expensive now. But I think people are not aware that, so strategy would be, right, the high level, who are we going to invade? What kind of
Right.
equipment we're going to need? What does the climate look like? What is the outcome that we're looking for? At least that's how we
Exactly.
used to do it. Now we're
Yep.
like, hey, let's just invade. We don't really have an outcome. But
Yeah.
but that's strategy. And then tactics would really be like, what's the loadout on each soldier? How many soldiers? What is the
Exactly.
conveyance to get them to the beach of the whatever the hell?
Right.
I mean, all of these details. And so what you're saying, and you're seeing the same thing I am, where companies that are really struggling with marketing, they're trying it in a kind of a tepid way. They're saying, hey, let's
Yeah.
do this one thing, a little bit of
Yeah.
it, and if it works, we're going to do more. Why is
Right.
that? Why do you think is that a good strategy?
Oh, it's beautiful.
You
I love
you
it.
love it?
No, I'm teasing.
Like,
I mean, that
I
I
was going
call
to
that
start doing that.
the winging it approach. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, let's
Well,
wing it and see where it goes,
now, but I want to be clear though. I'm not saying just throw a lot more money at it, or you
No,
always
no.
have to jump in with both feet. You know, some of this is like I'm going to actually back up a little bit, because let's
Okay.
try stuff and see what works. This actually recently came up, and that was kind of their strategy. And one could argue, well, they do have a strategy, and the strategy is to try some stuff and see what works.
Yes.
Um,
And that
what
is
I
winging
tried to
it.
explain is, yes, you absolutely could do that, uh, and but it's going to be the most expensive. It's going to be the highest risk approach, and it's going to take the longest, right? Because it's like another way of saying we're going to guess,
Right.
right? So now you're a research cat, right? That's
Yeah.
my hip name for you, cat.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I think people don't understand. You don't have to do it this way, because there's just a better way to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And
You know,
I'll give you a really specific example. Let's say what you're talking about, let's try some stuff and see what works. Let's have a hypothesis and let's try some stuff and we'll see what works.
yeah.
But they really haven't thought it through that much. It's kind of a general idea, but they have some kind of plan in their head or whatever it is. Um, so you're talking about uh, almost a type of gambling, but they don't understand that you can do some things to test ideas very rapidly and have
Right.
the information you need to get it like 98%, 99% right out of the gate. You don't have to make a million versions.
Yeah.
You start with 2 or 3 and you start A/B testing them, and now you're iterating. So the answer is kind of both, but
Right.
they're not exclusive. Am I making any sense?
Right.
I'm
You are
confusing
to believe it.
myself.
Yeah. That's what's important, that we have a fun time. That is beautiful.
Just love
One of
hearing
one of
myself
the
talk.
should we maybe talk a little bit about maybe what are some of the benefits or why people don't do it? We could certainly do that, but like for example, like one of the benefits, in my opinion, of having a strategy is, so let's say, Pete, and you and I have seen this a million times. We have a client, they're going down a certain path, and all of a sudden somebody approaches it. We ought to do radio advertising. Let's do radio, or let's do paper. You throw out the tactic, it doesn't matter what it is. And all of a sudden the client's going, oh, that's a great, let's do that. And then they buy some of that, and then that didn't work. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be better from a decision-making standpoint to say, hey, wait a minute. Does this align with our strategy? Oh, it doesn't. Why should we even bother wasting our time looking at that? If radio advertising was part of that, part of your marketing plan, and you go, okay, well, then maybe we'll listen to that. But
Right.
otherwise, those are good decisions in order to be able to say, I'm really sorry, that's not part of our strategy for this year.
Let me reflect that back to you in metaphor
Yeah,
form.
good.
Your marketing strategy is a marionette. What you just described is you bought a leg,
Yeah,
and then you couldn't get the marionette to work. Okay,
right.
it's by and again we're saying strategy, we're saying planning, but it's like going through this process to ask the questions, get the data, make decisions based on not just your gut is going to play into it, right? It's all
Right.
together. It's a lot of information, but then making objective, realistic decisions documenting it in a plan,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
it increases your odds for success, but it allows you to know exactly what kind of marionette and to control all the pieces so they work together. And, and I'm trying to think of a good marionette act, but I can't think of one because marionettes are horrible. It's like nightmare fuel. But you understand what I'm saying. It's marketing is all about, and I would even say I would throw sales in there as two functions.
Hmm.
It's all about manipulating a lot of different systems together. That's what works. One
Yeah,
thing by itself, but you might get lucky, I guess.
yeah,
But it doesn't work that way. I wish it did.
yeah, yeah. You know, and I mean, sometimes it does, but it only does it for a certain period of time. I remember in my early years, I worked with a guy I've talked to you about him many times. He was a management consultant, and we would go into organizations, and I remember being a 24-year-old kid walking out and saying, Ed, how do these people make money? They're so screwed up. Everything they're doing is just goofy. And he would tell me, there's one thing that they're doing, and that's momentum. The minute something changes, whether it's in the marketplace, a competitor joining in, anything else, they're going to be in serious trouble. So, to your point, it's like having that strategy and being able to follow it, I think, is a really good plan.
Well, and then let's add to this a little bit. Strategy. When you say these words a lot,
Yeah.
potential clients or people or business people, they instantly jump to some conclusions, right? They
Yeah.
think very expensive, takes a long time, slows us down, is really complicated. I know the business pretty well. I think I know what to do. Let's do this, right?
Yeah.
But it's not an organized way to make a decision. And if they weren't so dissatisfied, right, we wouldn't be talking
Yeah.
about it. If everybody's happy as pigs
Yeah.
in the sty,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be talking about it. But I do think, I think it was Sun Tzu that said, you know, tactics before strategy is the noise before defeat.
Hmm.
I would say strategy without experimentation is the slowest and riskiest route to victory. Experimentation without strategy is the noise before defeat. And so it's like there's a place for that experimentation and that rapid iteration, but it really comes chronologically after you've considered all the parts to your puzzle, all the
Yeah.
levers, and how much we're going to press each lever so that Howdy Doody looks like he's having a stroke or whatever. I don't know. That show
Exactly.
freaks me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's how I see it anyway. Like if
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I hope that's helpful for people. So it's like the other thing is it's
Well,
not static. You don't have a
no,
strategy and then you're done.
that's really a good
That
point. In
scares me.
fact, if somebody says, with regard to, their strategy and what they want to do, they're probably going to have some portion of their market planning or their, however you want to say this, to what I would call the flexible piece. So if something does emerge, or if they have to do something, or some kind of crisis hits, I mean, I think that that's part of your strategy as well. What are we going to do if, what are we going to do if we go into a recession? What are we going to do if, I mean, it's still part of,
Right.
I think your strategy, in the
And
planning.
considering it
So,
and another, let me go on for days about this, but also considering, for example, what's a realistic review of your company's capabilities? Like, are we making
exactly. I
decisions that,
love that.
like, if we were designing bridges
Yeah.
and we didn't have any engineers in the room, that could be hard. We can still have a plan to build a bridge. We can still have a
Right.
strategy to build a bridge. That's not a
Yeah.
bridge that I'd like to drive over. I would like to sell it to you, however.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You know, you just raised another critical point, and not to draw on
oh, good.
academia too much, but that's exactly right. Because here's the thing too. Somebody could develop a strategy. Let's take one from a marketing perspective. You and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. They take us right. Oh, we are going to grow by 20% or whatever. That could be a goal. It could be okay. So let's just take that. All right. But like you just said, what happens if we're not able to deliver the service or the product based on that growth? So you go ahead and you throw in all that marketing, you do
Right.
that. now all of a sudden you've just ticked off a bunch of either new customers or existing people because you've got a backlog, and now you're going to have to hire more customer service people to handle that problem. I mean, so you need to, that's
Well,
another
it's
reason for the
something to be
strategy.
considered. I mean, I would push back on you on that, in that, the odds of being slammed with, marketing opportunity in a very short period of time probably won't happen to most companies. But if you're already working at scale and you
Yeah.
I told the tale of a video where I changed one word in the title. It's a video that sat since 2014. And about a year ago or so, I changed one word in the title. And that
Yeah.
video that had 1,400 views, it was a cute puppy video because I love puppies. 1.4 million views in 4 days because I
Wow.
changed one word. Okay, it happens, right? Law
Yeah.
large numbers. But most of the clients we deal with are smaller. They do have infrastructure problems. They really have fires kind of burning everywhere. And so then
Mhm.
it's like, we're not saying, let's just stop what we're doing and just have about 1 million meetings and then we'll deliver a binder. So back in, now our age starts to show, right? You deliver a binder and you wanted to make sure it made a really good sound on the table.
Yeah.
Because then they got their money's worth. And then, of course, you'd hear back from clients over the years. They'd say, look, they gave us this binder. We don't know what in the hell to do with it. Well, because it's not a strategy.
Right.
It's some kind of plan of various quality. But, now, of course, maybe there's an electronic version now. We got to make this thing so big we can't email it. No, it's like, it's just a document. It's almost like an artifact, or it could be a document that guides your team as you implement, and you're always changing it, and you're updating it, and you're moving with the market as it's changing, and you're monitoring, and you're getting, I say this. So we talked about. Well, I'm going to stop there, but you had a great idea the other day to wrap up the show with a point, and so I think I have one. But you won't be able to see it because of our technology is limited there. But but I want you to wrap up this idea. So, a lot of misunderstanding about what strategy is,
Yeah.
not just theoretically, but in okay, great. How do we as a team do it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'd love to talk about it more. And we will talk about it more right here on Thursdays at 11 o'clock. But if you want to get some real granular information about strategy, I know I speak for myself and maybe Bill, happy to always elaborate. We want you to know how to do this stuff. Doesn't matter who you hire, but know what you're hiring. Okay.
Yeah.
Last thoughts. Well, actually, we have
My
time.
last.
It's it's only been 19 minutes. We're not going to rush you off the air here.
Well, I mean, maybe we could talk about what could go into a strategy. Would that make sense? Or because, like you said, you scared me a
Talk
little bit
about
when
whatever you want. You're the co-host.
Okay. How I look at it is, I mean, it actually came to me this morning. Okay, so I got on the scale. I've been trying to lose weight for
All right.
the last, since January 1st. Every time I get on the scale, the weight is the same. And so I'm like, okay, this is really getting frustrating. Okay, so, but I think if you look at strategy, it's like that. It's like, okay, are you just going to continue? I mean, getting on the scale is a tactic. It's like, okay, that's just one thing, but maybe you need to say, I'm going to lose weight by, eating, healthier, going to the Y, lifting weight, doing whatever so those are the things that you need to do. And then it makes you accountable, so it's like, okay, well,
Right.
then you could say, what did I do wrong? Why am I not losing weight? Well, chances are you will lose weight if you start doing the things that are in those strategies. But so it'll also hold you accountable, or in marketing terms, show you your return on investment.
How do
like
you measure it if it's not in some kind of deliberate fashion?
That's
And
exactly right.
if you really dig, most companies actually aren't measuring. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the stuff that we say on this show, we don't mean to sound like we know everything or anything
Yeah.
like that, but it's things that we get over and over again. And
Yeah.
people will swear up and down that they're really good with their metrics, but when you
Yeah.
actually start digging in, so everybody can feel a little bit better about themselves. Everyone's data is a mess.
Yeah.
Everybody's metrics and tracking and attribution is sort of a mess. Everyone, don't
Yeah.
feel bad. It's okay.
Exactly.
It can be fixed.
Yeah. If you wanted me to give you my takeaway,
Give me your
you know,
takeaway.
my takeaway is I want the viewers to spend a little time on their business rather than in their business. So rather than doing all these marketing tactics, maybe step back a little bit and just start asking some good questions and think about where you want to go. To me, that might help them to decide on a strategy. I'll give you one example and then I'll turn it over to you to give us yours. Early in my business, we started off, we did a ton of work in the healthcare industry. And I mean a ton, it was probably 80%. And I remember one day I was like, when we were doing our planning process, it was the same thing. I sat back and said, whoa, this is kind of scary. What happens if something happens in this industry? We need to have more balance. We need to do some other things. And so we made a strategy to try to go out and get some different types of businesses, whether it was manufacturing, service, you name it. We did a lot in the association world in that time. So that to me was a strategy. It's like we got to do something, otherwise we're going to be in trouble 3 years from now or 2 years from now or whatever if we stay this course. So
Right.
I'll give it back to you. That's just one.
Well, then you must have, you had to whittle that down to very specific actions that you would take, even like super tedious. That's part of the problem with a lot of this work is it's very, very tedious. You said like, as we were doing our planning, we're in the business of planning, so we're pretty good at planning. So we actually do planning, but we're the exception probably to the rule. We also have the tools, which makes it kind of easier for us.
Yeah.
But only through going through that process do I even know what to do. And I've gotten it wrong plenty of times, too, for my own business. But I think the iteration of working with lots of different companies, lots of different clients in different industries, you really start to see these strong patterns. And the big patterns that I see is shiny object syndrome, trying one thing at a time, starting small, trying to make it bigger. Some fight between minimum viable product, MVP, and lean startup, sort of iterate that approach, and then too much planning. It's like a big battle going on. So I'm going to attempt to, we'll go to our slides screen. We'll see if that works. We'll see if we're on the screen. So here's what I came up with. There's 3 primary colors of building a business: strategy plus analytics plus agility. And so strategy is a clear vision of like who you're serving, the problem you're solving. It's your positioning. It's understanding what they need. I mean, think of Google Glasses, okay, as a solution that nobody needed. So how many billions of dollars did they spend on their bet that everybody's going to wear these glasses? Maybe they should have had a better strategy. An outline of how you'll solve it. Let's just say an outline, right? Analytics is how you measure the results, iterate, test your strategy. So it has some of that lean startup methodology in there. And then agility, strategies aren't fixed. You got to adapt, sometimes month to month, actually. I mean, I remember, very few companies are doing 18-month, 24-month plans anymore. It's 12 months or less, right? And I think it's just because, hey, as long as they're willing to do the process again every 6 months or whatever, awesome. That would be ideal. But even just once a year, going through the questions, asking the same questions that you swear you know the answers to.
Right.
Do we? Are we sure? Where did the information come from? So, and then, Mr. CEO, how do you know they only buy on price? Can you share your data?
Exactly.
And if that person says, listen, son, I've been in this business about 3,500 years, boy. And I know because I've talked to every customer on the planet. Everybody in the business knows us. What was the question again? If he says that,
exactly,
you can be like, got it, sir. 10-4, we're going to put that down in the assumption column. All right? We don't know why they buy. And here's the thing. Of the thousands of surveys of customers that we've done, how many times has price been number one?
Hardly ever.
Say it. I'm going to say 0. I can't remember a single time when price was the number one thing that we used to decide.
Yeah. In my opinion,
3. 3.
Most of the time,
4.
it's a combination of several different things. It's never one thing.
Well, we should talk about that and the way, and so people have changed their entire way that they buy. I mean, so why do you need to stay on top of your strategy, be flexible? Oh, I don't know, like a pandemic might come along and change the entire friggin' landscape, right?
Yeah.
Things happen. So we're going to talk about that more on the program. But yeah, I think we've beaten that to death. I think I hope people get a sense of the difference between strategy and planning. And it's really just an organized way to make decisions in your business, just like you would do for operations, you'd do for finance, you do for something else. Marketing got off the hook somehow, somewhere. Like they're like, the marketing guys. They come
They're too
shooting.
creative.
Yeah, they come in the meeting like shooting guns in the air and drinking
Yeah, we don't
tequila,
understand it.
and they're just like throwing stuff out there. Hey, monkeys and bananas,
Yeah.
And somehow that became okay, I guess. But
Yeah.
we're just old guys that think we know everything, and I hope you'll join us here once a week. And we got cool music. Let me see if I can start it without messing it up.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfrey and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.
Here we go again.